Welcome to the Friday vlog here at the Order of Eden. I'm calling today's episode Computers and Scalpels Revisited. Now, in the first episode, I talked about... It was based on something I had said in another vlog. This is getting a little too meta. Okay, so I talked about trying to use technology like a scalpel, like a precision tool that you use once and then put back down. My biggest concern about technology is the idea that it is using us and not the other way around. So in the episode Computers and Scalpels, I had talked about my idea of using my computer like the precision instrument that it should be, and I took my big computer setup at home and I moved it to my office at church with the idea that, hey, if I want to play video games on the computer, then great, I'll take the computer home that night for that purpose and not just have it sit there as a constant temptation and distraction. So, Computers and Scalpels Revisited, I brought the computer back home. Okay, so I actually have the laptop sitting here today for recording purposes, but early this week, yesterday, I brought the computer back home. I realize this is going to come out on Friday. So Wednesday, I brought the computer back home. And here's why. So it was 2 to 3 weeks, roughly, of having my nice computer set up in my church office. And in the first video, I talked about some really cool benefits to it. But like all good things, it comes to an end. It's not bad having it at church, at my office, but it wasn't perfect, and I want to talk about that. So from 2 to 3 weeks of it, we had some good and some bad. So early on, like I said in the last video, I found myself reading more. And I think that came from the initial excitement is too strong of a word, but the interesting idea that, okay, I specifically removed this piece of technology from my normal home life, so I was reading more. And then after a little bit of that, you just find other ways to use technology. So I seem to be pinning a lot of my technology use on having this large, fast, awesome computer setup. But the truth was, after a bit, if I didn't feel like reading, I still had my small laptop. I could watch Netflix just as easily on that. I could watch YouTube just as easily on that. So just because I didn't have my big computer in front of me, didn't mean I always wanted to do whatever the alternative is. And that's not always bad. Alright, so I also said that the computer had been really helpful to have at church. Actually, having that computer power in my office helped me do some things that I wouldn't have otherwise done in service of my church work. And that's true, and I stand by that. That's solid. Something it did hurt was music production. So keeping the computer in my church office, I didn't have it close by to work on music whenever I felt like. So with video games, if I'm gonna play video games, I'm gonna play them for a while. So that's more of like your kind of Friday night type thing. You know, you have all this time, you don't have to get up early the next day, and I think, you know what, I'm going to play video games and do it and set up with, a few of my relatives, and we're all going to play games together. And I could easily plan for that. I would talk to them in advance, say, hey, you free that night? We'll play this game. And I could bring the computer home for that. But music, you would find after work, I would just like, I'd really like to work on that song, but my computer's at church. And I wasn't going to come back just to work on music, so I just ended up doing other stuff instead. Like, you could just watch a few more Netflix shows. So it was very helpful at church at times, but it also hurt music of quality stuff that I'm not saying anything about the quality of the music, but creating music, that's a quality activity. That's a high level activity that I don't feel bad about doing. Like, it's not like I don't think I'm wasting time meaningfully working on music, but I wasn't able to do it as easily because the computer wasn't sitting right there. So there was the good of less video games, and then there was the bad of less video games. So early on, it seemed like, okay, you know what? I'm not just going to go and instantly play video games, so you know what? I'm going to read, or I'm going to do this, or, we played a board game last week, or something like that. And that can be good, and I played less video games randomly. The one game that I really like, that I play more socially, is Sea of Thieves. But then a game that I wanted to get back into called StarCraft, I've been wanting to get back into it because I like my brain on that game. I like my brain on StarCraft. Because something like StarCraft is high-level, high-speed, strategic thinking. I always played they're called real-time strategy games. I always played them as a kid, but I never quite understood how in-depth you could get until I started watching videos on them as an adult and realized they were talking in chess terms. They were talking about ways to open. They were talking about some early game, some mid-game. Here's some late-game strategy. And it was like high-speed chess, where you were responsible for making your own chess pieces at the same time and getting them out quickly enough to maneuver and win the game. And these are games that aren't completely open-ended. It's not like playing Minecraft, where you spend hours playing the game and there's still an infinite amount of time to go. It's not open-ended. A game starts, a game ends. It requires high-level thinking, high-level strategy. It requires high-level hand-eye coordination. And that's something I've been wanting to get back into. But my computer was at work. So, a pro of having it at work? Less video games. A con? Less video games. Life is funny that way. And here's a big takeaway I got from it. So, the big idea, there's always another screen. Okay, and here's, I guess, the problem with technology, because some of that was good, some of that was bad. Taking away my big computer, at the time I thought, well, you know what, I won't play video games as unconsciously. But just because I wasn't playing video games unconsciously didn't mean I didn't end up doing other things unconsciously. Just because I wasn't doing this doesn't mean I was always reading or writing or studying or doing something like that. Yeah, I played less video games. I probably watched more Netflix and YouTube. So without my big computer, I could still watch it on my small computer. And if I said, oh, okay, you know what, I really need to just hit this hard, I'm going to leave my small laptop at church too. Well, I still have a phone, and I would probably start using it to watch random stuff more than I already do. And I also think you need a why. You need a distinct reason why you want to or want to not do something. If I want to do less video games just mindlessly, well, maybe you got to dig to what you're why are you actually just escaping your own mind? Or like, you need purpose over just discipline, because discipline without any reason is just an annoying rule, and that will fail you very quickly. So maybe if you always feel the need for this very passive entertainment, like I do, like many people do, whether it's video games, just constant TV, just social media, news even. News is I'll probably do a segment on news soon. I have so much I want to say about news. But sometimes we have to dig down to the idea of, you know what, maybe we're just actually... Maybe the why doesn't just need to be about playing games or watching TV. Maybe the why needs to be more directed at your life. Like, why are we so bored with life, or looking to escape life, or just uninterested and unmotivated to actually live our life, that we just kind of want to sit here and zone out while we let entertainment happen to us instead of actually engaging heavily in life. So there were some good things about moving my computer, there were some bad things about moving my computer, and that's why I sort of approach most of my life nowadays like an experiment. And that's a much more interesting way to live, I think. It's interesting for me, and nothing is really a failure then. You know, it's not like, oh, you stopped doing something you were doing, so you failed, you messed up. No, I had some cool takeaways. I had some interesting lessons, and now I think I would rather more thoughtfully integrate technology and plan technology as opposed to just trying to remove it, because trying to cut technology out of my life, that's actually not what I've ever been trying to do. But when we run into problems of, oh man, I'm over consuming this, or I'm just turning to this mindlessly, or this is taking me away from this responsibility, or this is stealing my focus, sometimes it's tempting to just bludgeon the problem, to just cut it off, cut it out, just get rid of the computer, just move that to church so you don't actually have to deal with whatever the underlying issue is. And then, as I found, if you take that approach to things in life, then you end up missing out on the good that it offers too. I wasn't able to work on music when I wanted to. I wasn't able to play a video game that is really good for my mind. And honestly, the way some of these videos come across, if you don't know me, you probably think like, oh man, it sounds like this guy must play video games 12 hours a day. No, I really don't. And I really only play 2 games, Sea of Thieves and StarCraft, and the one is very social and the one is very strategy based. So like, I'm not spending endless hours playing like Candy Crush or some really stupid, wildly addicting game. There's kind of just a lot of things that I want to do in my life and with my life in all sorts of ways, and I kind of need to use time well for that. So, I don't know. Computers and Scalpels revisited. My computer is back home, and hopefully it'll help having had that time away and then that time back. It's almost like a short, like a technology fast of some kind. But we can dig into that later. I'm actually probably going to dig into the concept of fasting next week, and that'll talk about a whole bunch of stuff and not really food. So, computers back home, interesting experiment, learned a lot, and you know what? Experiments are cool. Do some experiments with your life. Make some changes that can easily be changed back, but they have the potential of bettering things, and at the very least you learn the pros and cons of what these actions do if you're thoughtful enough about it. So, experiment ended for now. I learned what I needed to, but I'm going to keep going on with this synthesis problem. So, those are my thoughts for today. Computer's back. Hopefully good things to come. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.